Welcome to Everyday Greatness, a nice little show proudly brought to you by major sponsor ARA Group, one of Australia's greatest supporters of community projects. Everyday Greatness is a show hosted by a real human being, talking to some real people about real human issues that will help make you feel proud again of simply being a good solid Joe bag of donuts. Here's your host, Barnaby Howarth.
Welcome to Everyday Greatness, and thanks for listening. This is a show designed to celebrate the greatness inside everyday people. So grab a drink, kick your feet up, and settle in. Before I start today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia. I think acknowledging Indigenous Australians is far more important than just reading from a generic, impersonal script. So I'd like to acknowledge our traditional owners from the heart. I love being an Australian. So I'd like to honour those who came before us, those who share their land with us today, and those who follow us. As a white Australian, I'm flat out embarrassed at some of the things that have happened in this country in the past. So I'd like to acknowledge that I feel horrible for any pain that's been caused. But I'd also like to acknowledge how beautiful Australian Aboriginal culture, your past, your place in today's society, and your future are. Thank you for sharing your country with us. Before I start our interviews, I'd like to thank our episode sponsors today, Entire Plumbing and Thornley Plumbing, for jointly sponsoring this episode. If you want a high-level, reliable plumbing service with a no-bullshit experience and two very good groups of people dealing with you every step of the way, you couldn't go past Entire or Thornley Plumbing. To have the best shower you possibly can, having just the hot or the cold taps on would be really uncomfortable. To make sure you get that best shower, the hot and cold taps need to work together. And the same goes in business. Trying to bring down your competition might mean you're the only business in town and would make you the top dog. But if you're the only dog in town, your customers will suffer. As the saying goes, the customer is always right. So if you eliminate the competition in your business, in your field, you might be doing your own business a disservice. Some people say being nice in business could leave them open to being taken advantage of. If you're only concerned about your bottom line, just not being a tool in business can boost your profits. My guests today, David DIGHTON from Thornley Plumbing and Mark LIVY from Entire Plumbing, are direct competitors in the same field. But rather than try and undermine each other to get ahead, they're good mates who play AFL nines together and refer work to each other. David and Mark both understand that to give their customers the best experience, they need to work together, just like the hot and cold taps in the shower. This has no relevance to this introduction whatsoever, but it's a really good stat, so I'm going to bring it on. Both David and Mark are ex-AFL footballers. David was the first Sydney-based AFL player drafted to the AFL and played for the North Melbourne Kangaroos, while Mark is a former Sydney Swan. So both of them know about ruthless competition. But at the same time, both of them are just flat-out good family men and friends who work together as competitors. And David and Mark join me now. A lot of people justify being a good person in business because it brings them a strategic advantage and increases their profit margin. Others do it just because not being a tool in business is the right thing to do. David DIGHTON from Thornley Plumbing is an old school business owner. A lot of the lessons he uses in his business came from his time at the North Melbourne Kangaroos AFL club. David takes pride in his performance, gives his best at every contest, and never gives up. He also understands that you don't have to like your opponents, but you have to respect them. David often tells people he was so good as a footballer that he felt like he had no opponent. But he understands that competition made him a better player. It kept him honest, made sure he worked hard, and didn't take anything for granted. And Thornley Plumbing is run in exactly the same way. All the staff there pride themselves on hard work and integrity. And it's a lot more than just a sexy marketing terminology. That's how David rolls himself. And I'm honoured to say that David Dighton joins me now on Everyday Greatness. David, welcome. We'll get into business and plumbing in just a second, but firstly, how good was that Kangaroos team you were drafted to? Who were some of the players in that team?
Oh, look, it was, when I got there, it was actually pretty rubbish. I think they'd finished low in the ladder the year before. They were in the midst of searching for a new coach. It was the end of Wayne Schimmelbusch's reign as coach, and during the early parts of 1993, they poached Dennis Pagan from Essendon. He was the assistant coach at Essendon, and they poached Pagan from Essendon to try and bring the Roos some sort of some sort of credit, because I don't think they were in great shape. But it was the first year of King Carey's reign. He was captain. He was 22. It was a big show. And look, it was, as a 17-year-old kid who all I ever wanted to do was play pro football, it was surreal. You turn up to the locker room and there's all these greats that you've watched on TV, that you've idolised, and all of a sudden, you're sharing a locker room with them, sharing the blood, sweat and tears of the game. So it was pretty full on. There was Wayne Carey, Johnny Longmire, Glenn Archer, Anthony Stevens, Anthony Rock, Wayne Schwass, Darren Crocker, the Scholl brothers. There's a lot of, AFL royalty, definitely North Melbourne royalty in that list. But, it was good. It was good. It was a good time. Only a very short time, sadly, but it was a good time.
Did you get to sit down and chat with any of those legends you just spoke about at the footy club?
Session, we were at Trinity Grammar, and it was pre-season, and they were just doing the age-old drill where you have two lines and coach in the middle that rolls the ball out, and you just have to hip and shoulder and vie for possession of the ball. And I got paired up with John Longmire. Now, when I got drafted, I was my height, so just under 6'6", and 75 kilos. So there wasn't a great deal of me when it comes to stature. But and I got paired up with Johnny Longmire, and ball rolls out, and I thought to myself, right, are you really going to have to lean into this? That's the horse, it's the big fella. And I leant in and ricocheted off him like a pinball and dropped my head, got to the back of the line, and he came back to the back of the line and he said, "Chin up, mate, lift your head. We've all gone through it. You'll be fine." And that was sort of my first experience with, one of the big names of the AFL.
Outstanding, the big horse.
The big horse.
Outstanding, the big horse. So when you were delisted by North Melbourne, did you have a plan B, or were you flying by the seat of your pants back then?
When I got delisted, it was very different to the way things are now. And ever since I was a little boy, because my dad had a very short stint with Essendon, ever since I was a little boy, all I ever wanted to do was play pro footy. I'd worked as hard as I could to get there, and I finally did. And I think that initially I got delisted because I had a growth disorder in my back, and I failed my final fitness test, and they had other players like Corey McKernan, Matty Capuano, and guys like that were fit and healthy. And so they broke the news to me just after the grand final, which North Melbourne were in the reserve grade grand final against Melbourne that year. And they basically broke it to me on the Monday after that. And I was shattered, absolutely shattered. A 18-year-old kid that, you know, was able to reach his dream goal, only then to have it taken away was shattering. I did reinstate myself back into the draft, but wasn't picked up by anybody in Melbourne, and returned to Sydney and did pre-season with the Swans. But I think immaturity and my mental status at the time didn't allow me to perform at the best. And, yeah, that was the end of it. So it was short and sweet, but that was it.
To the Swans' detriment, no doubt, Dolster. So let's talk plumbing now. When you set up Thornley Plumbing, what sort of business did you want it to be?
I was working for a company who I'd done the bulk of my apprenticeship with, and I always wanted to go out on my own. And a friend of mine who'd already owned Thornley Plumbing, or had started it probably 18 months earlier, he was moving to regional New South Wales. And it just happened, all the cards aligned, and it just happened that when Matt was leaving, I was looking to go out on my own. So I ended up purchasing Thornley Plumbing off him. Mainly the name. There was some goodwill and some work attached to it, but it was mainly the name. But look, I grew up in Thornley, and I wanted to create a business that I guess I didn't have to reach for work via advertising. I wanted my reputation and my name to precede us enough that people would seek us out through reputation, as opposed to just scrolling through the book and going for the first name that they came up with. Predominantly, I mean, I've been in business since 2003, and the first 5 years we advertised, and probably since then, 99% of our work has been referral, word of mouth, or just the simple fact that we do such a good job, we just continually get the repeat business.
And is the business you're running today staying true to those ideals, those very genuine ideals you had when you set the business up initially?
My grandfather had a lot of influence over me with regards to he was a perfectionist, and I've always been a perfectionist, and that has its good sides and its bad sides. But he always used to tell me that if a job's worth doing, it's worth doing well. And he always used to tell me it's okay to make money, but you have to be fair about the way you do it. And, I mean, look, and I know Mark would attest to this too, we're not the cheapest guys in the world, and we never will be, because you can't buy what we deliver at the cheapest rate. It just, you can't have that. And I'm very fussy about staff that I put on. We vet them reasonably thoroughly over anywhere between a 3 or a 6 month probationary period to ensure that they are the right fit. And if they're not the right fit, we move them on. We, over the last 6 or 7 years, we've acquired a very, very specific clientele, and those clients expect the best. And I need to make sure that as a business owner, we deliver that to them.
It sounds as though you do. Now, you mentioned Mark Livy just a second ago. That's exactly my point. Mark Livy at Entire Plumbing is your direct competition. Why don't you hate him and try and do dodgy deals behind his back?
Well, I didn't
to stab him in the back so you can get ahead.
But no, look, I mean, the thing with running businesses in local areas, I mean, unless you're a huge multi-billion-dollar business, everybody has to kind of work together, and you can look at it in two ways, or you can attack it in two ways. You can either go out there as wanting to be the solo guy that gets everybody's work and talks trash about other companies behind their back just to be able to secure work, or you can take the moral high ground and be ethical and utilise other companies around you when you need to. And it's not using them, it's utilising them. And I think, Mark's and my business are both probably small to medium businesses, and you get periods where you get such a large influx in work that you can't physically complete that work. But the last thing you want to do as a business owner is give that work away. So what a lot of us do, and Mark and I specifically, is we will call each other up and say, hey, listen, I can't get to this job. Can you get to it for me today? You invoice me, I'll invoice my customer. That way we keep the customer happy. We keep the customer as our client, and the work gets done in a timely and efficient manner by somebody that we trust.
That's a lot of trust. Working together in business sounds very scientific and strategic. Is it? Do you and Mark have regular meetings to ensure both businesses benefit from your relationship? Or is it as simple as being the fact that you see each other a lot, but you just make sure you have more interactions where you don't mind each other than you do when you hate each other?
We don't really have business meetings. I mean, we've got enough on our own plate to deal with, as opposed to catching up and having business meetings. I think the ground rules are set out pretty early. So when we started sort of working with each other, the ground rules were set out pretty early. And I think the biggest thing is for me, it's about servicing the client. So, I don't expect Mark to reduce his costings for me, and I don't believe he expects the same of me. What it's about is servicing the client and keeping the client happy so that client returns to you when required. And, there's a lot of guys in the local area that are all good guys. And I have a few in my circle that I trust with my business. I mean, I have a rule of thumb that if I was to do a job for Mark, for example, and his client said, look, can I have your details just in case something goes wrong? We have a very direct answer to that, and that is, no, you can't. You're Mark's client. If there's any dramas, you ring Mark. Mark will ring me. We don't hand out business cards. We don't hand out numbers. We're there representing Mark's business, and he's there representing my business. And it's basically, when I need him, his company is an extension of mine, and when he needs me, I'm an extension of him. We don't vie for each other's work. And I mean, we've had recently, we just had a perfect example of that where inadvertently I was called in to have a look at a site that we have done domestic work on, and Mark does the strata work for this particular site. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but because we'd done we'd completed some domestic works there for some of the owners personally, they asked if we would come in and have a look at the job. And it was really simply just based on the fact that they wanted a second opinion. And I walked in, had a look at it. The job was done well. There was no issues with it. They just wanted a second opinion. They just wanted to know that what they were getting was fair and reasonable, and it was. But at the end of the day, I then found out it was Mark. Right at the end, they presented me with his invoice and costings and things like that. But I'd already given them half of pretty much all the information that they needed before I even knew it was him. And I basically just finished off by saying to the strata manager or the on-site manager that, I felt that Mark was an extremely ethical plumber, and that I didn't feel that he would in any way shortchange these clients. And I think that, the strata manager needed to convey that. Plumbers are never going to be cheap. We spend anywhere between 6 to 10 years learning what we do, and sometimes more. I mean, I personally have done 10 years of study to get the qualifications that I have, and I'm sure Vivs has done the same thing. But, so there's a lot to know about plumbing. There's a lot to do with safety, health, so on and so forth. So I think, in this particular instance, they were really just concentrating on cost, and it wasn't that. It was It was the quality of the work, and the quality of the work was good.
Thorn Lead Plumbing is a very, very much a family business. Your wife pretty much runs the show. Do you ever feel like you're just her assistant?
I just need to check whether she's within earshot. No, she's okay. No, look, when I very first started, I wanted everything done a very particular way, and that's part and parcel of being a perfectionist. Is that there's often only a handful of ways to do something, and they're all yours. And I found that early in the piece, I lost good clients because I was servicing them well from a plumbing perspective, but I couldn't keep up with the administration side of things and the operational side of things with regards to the work required in the office. And I tried to do that to the best of my ability and couldn't do it. And that's when I sort of said to Edwina, because she has a background in HR and things like that, and she's exceptional on computers. She's got a fantastic manner with clients, and she basically came on board to run all of the admin side of things, scheduling. So she deals with all of our high-end clients on a daily basis, and I mean they love her. She's always had a fantastic manner with people, and she's funny. So yeah, look, without her, our business wouldn't be what it is. There's no questions about that, but she's a terrible plumber.
Have either of your daughters expressed any interest in taking over the family business when they grow up?
That was a big, hard no. My youngest daughter, Marley, said, I said, look, would you like to take over Mum and Dad's business? And she said, I don't want to touch poo, Dad, but I'll just drive around and pick up all the cash and checks. So look, there's potential. There's potential.
Very smart girls. The business world seems so serious these days. Are you ever tempted to try and make Thornley Plumbing an empire by taking down the little guy and becoming one of the world's super rich, like Elon Musk or Richard Branson?
I mean, don't get me wrong. I aspire to be great at what I do, but I don't want to do that. No, I want to have a business that is sustainable. I want to have a business that can create a lifestyle that I think I've earned. And I know that may sound selfish, but I work hard every day. I take phone calls up until 9, 10 o'clock at night. I respond to emails, weekends. I feel I've earned the right to enjoy the spoils of my business, and I want to create a life for my daughters and for my family that allows them the best that I can provide. And I don't mean that I'm going to give them everything. I want to give them the opportunities. I think for them, it's going to be a lot harder than what it was for us growing up. And I want to be able to provide the best opportunities that I can for them so that they, going forwards, they can be the best they can be. But I don't want to have an empire. I don't want to have 30 trucks on the road, because that's 26 more headaches than I've already got.
Beautiful. Why do you bother making sure you abide by certain ethical principles at Thornley Plumbing? A lot of the world, especially the business world, seems to have no problem operating without human decency. So why is it important to you that your business maintains integrity?
Old school, Barnes. That's the way I'm wired. It's the way I was brought up. I don't see there really any other way. I mean, Livs and I see we come across a ton of work from other plumbers that is just horrendous. And you constantly question, how can these guys do what they do? Some people are wired like that. Some people aren't. I like to be able to sleep at night I like to be able to walk down to my local shops knowing that nobody's going to be looking at me going, oh, that's the grub that ripped me off, or that's the, they're terrible plumbers, or this and that. I think it's important to me to do the right thing. I know that may sound cliche, but it is. It's important to me as a person to do the right thing. And I think it's as simple as that.
Very well said. What is your relationship with Mark outside of work?
We played some nines footy together. Look, we're mates. He's got his close circle of friends and I've got my close circle of friends. But if Mark ever needed me to help him do something, I'd always happily do it. And I'd always be there for him. I consider him a mate and a good mate. And, somebody that, we'll put it this way, if he's somebody that I trust with my clients and my business, then, that I think that in itself speaks volumes. We don't see each other a lot outside of I guess industry things, but look, he's even doing work at my mother-in-law's house. It's specific to part of his business and it's stuff that we don't do. And when she asked us who we'd recommend, we recommended him because the last thing every man knows, the last thing you want is an infuriated mother-in-law. So Livs knows that he's holding my livelihood in his hands whilst he's doing my mother-in-law's bathroom. But look, yeah, we catch up. We might catch up for a beer and that type of thing, and catch up with some of our suppliers. And as I said, we've played footy together. So yeah, no, it's good. It's a good friendship. I think it's a solid one.
Good luck with that job, Liver, on David's mother-in-law's place. Is it hard? Is it hard to maintain a friendship with your direct competitor? Do you have to drag yourself along to those beers with Liver?
This is the thing. It's easy. Conversation flows. It's we don't always talk about work, and it's simple. There's no arm twisting or difficulty in it at all. It's easy. Well, it is from my perspective. I don't know what he'd say. He better say the same thing.
What's your read on business these days? Do nice guys always finish last, and does the squeaky wheel always get the oil?
Sadly, mate, there's a lot of big businesses out there that are continually ripping people off, and I often say to myself, I'm tired of being the nice guy. I know that contradicts what I said earlier, but you do, because sadly, and it's a cynical view, but I think humanity has changed in the way it views itself. And I think that there's always a handful of people that are just painful to work for and work with. And if you don't have some sort of ruthless bone to lean on, then you get walked over. And, it took me a while to realise that you have to be able to stand up for yourself. I think social media also creates its own problems with the fact that, Edwina's, I've had clients where I've just said to Edwina, right, I'm going to write an email to this person and diplomatically let them have it, because I'm infuriated with how they've treated us. And you have to be very cautious of doing stuff like that, because the implications on social media can be so devastating. Bad reviews and that type of thing, especially in local community areas where you work. So it's hard. It is hard being the nice guy, but I look at it in the simple fact that if it's one or two rotten eggs out of a dozen boxes of eggs, then so be it.
Well, David, you've made yourself and your business sound incredibly ethically gold and you sound like a really good guy and your business sounds like a really trustworthy business. But let me ask you one more question and see how you go with this one. If Thornley Plumbing was tried to make into one of those super profitable businesses that was ruthless and tried to bring the small guy down, you'd probably have to lay some people off. Who'd be the first person you'd lay off?
Myself, because I wouldn't be able to look at my grandfather's picture knowing that I was doing what I was doing just to turn a dollar. I honestly, and again, it may sound cliche, but I don't have it in me. I don't have it in me to be that person that has no social or moral compass that you can just rip people off and close your eyes at night. I just don't have it in me. I mean, I will say one thing, and this is probably about as ruthless as I get. Given our relationship, Barnes, I'm a bit disappointed that Entire Plumbing was named before Thornley Plumbing as the sponsorship. Mark's younger than me, so I have seniority on him. I'm far better looking. And my wife's not going to be overly happy with that, Barnes. So that's about as ruthless as I do get. But, yeah, I would lay myself off, mate, because I honestly, I couldn't do what some of these bigger companies do. I don't have that in me ethically.
Well, you already sounded pretty good, but you just made yourself sound better. David Dighton, thank you so much for joining me on Everyday Greatness.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.
And good luck with Thornley Plumbing. My next guest today, Mark Livy from Entire Plumbing, helped the Sydney Swans win the 2005 AFL Premiership. The Bloods culture of the Sydney Swans was based on accountability of every person within the Swans for their actions both on and off the field, how they treated their other teammates, coaches, staff, opposition and competition from within was just as important as how they played on game day. Mark Livy played for the Swans in 1998. He was in direct competition with guys like Adam Goods, Leo Barry, Michael O'Loughlin, Jared Crouch, Paul Kelly and Tony Lockett. So if competition made the Swans better and Mark Livy was their direct competition, it goes without saying that he helped drive the Swans to that grand final win. That might be a very long bow, but the point is, Mark Livy knows about the importance of respecting competition. Mark and David's businesses, Entire Plumbing and Thornley Plumbing, don't try and drag each other down. They work together to help both of their businesses get better. And I'd like to welcome Mark Livy to Everyday Greatness. Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Barner. Good to be here, mate.
Well, let's get straight into the footy first. In the interests of transparency, I should let people know that you and I were teammates at the Swans in 1998. Tell me how you felt on your first day at training, running around with people like Plugger Lockett, the greatest goal kicker in AFL history.
Yeah, red hot, Barnes. Any chance to give yourself a little bit of an up there? No. First training, I believe we probably drove in together because we only lived about 10 minutes apart. And I do remember driving down at the front of the SCG. Back in that day, the Swans trained on the SCG and their locker rooms were under the stadium. And I don't think we could find the bloody door to get into the joint, to get into the training sheds. We were very green, mate, but we learned a lot in that year, obviously. Super daunting. We both had a lot of experience playing state footy and a bit of national footy in the Rams, and we travelled around Australia. But in that element of being, again, like you feel like you're the kid in year 7 trying to adapt and find your way, and it's very anxious and very nerve-wracking when you walk into that room and see all those stars, as Dolly has explained.
Very true. All right, you talked about the Rams earlier. You were the leading goal kicker in the national under-18 competition before being listed by the Swans. Did you feel like you were at the start of a journey to greatness when you were listed at the Sydney Swans?
I did, mate, but in retrospect, I don't think my mindset was quite right. I don't think I was mature enough to sort of see myself as probably that in that role and to take the next step in that 1 year time period that we had there at the Swans. So in a way, yes, because as a kid, as Dolly has said, you want to play AFL your whole life. I grew up in Melbourne, and my old boy used to do a lot of work and trade and draft work for Hawthorn, as did his father. So we're well cultured to want to be like that professional footballer. But I do feel like thrown into the deep end at the Swans really did sort of shake me up a little bit, and I probably didn't grab it with both hands. I probably went into that year maybe expecting things just to happen when, as we all know, if you don't quite put in that right amount of effort or direction, sometimes timing as well, things don't pan out the way you'd like them to.
Very true. The Bloods culture of the Swans is now a legendary part of Swans culture, but it hadn't quite started when you were there in 98. Looking back with the advantage of hindsight, could you see the seeds of greatness in some of the young blokes you played alongside who were just kids in reserve grade at that stage?
Yeah, definitely. The main one that comes to mind from when we were both there as 17, 18-year-old players was Adam Goods, and he got drafted the same year as us. Goodsy was a year younger than us. He got drafted under the 17-year-old rule. And look, when we were at the Swans, we had Damien Drum as the twos coach and Rodney Eade as the ones coach. And look, both of them are just lunatics. If anyone knows AFL and they know those two coaches, they're formidable, and that preseason training was just out of this world. I don't think you'll ever see that combination again. And with Goodsy, he was a superstar in the under-18s, as you well know. For anyone that doesn't know, he was sensational, hence getting drafted as a 17-year-old. And just experiencing and watching Goodsy get pushed through pre-season training and the training during the year was some of the drills were a little bit upsetting, I've got to say, because I have a feeling that the coaches kind of thought that maybe Goodsy was a little bit soft. And as we well know now through his career, far from it. But there was one training session with Goodsy where I remember we'd just have two blokes on the bags and the coach would roll the ball through at your feet, and you'd have to keep your head over the ball, pick up the ball with one possession and keep it clean. And the guys with the bags would just flog you. You'd normally go back to the start of the line, but they kept pushing Goodsy back to the front of the line. By the time they were done, he had blood all over his face, and I really felt for the poor bugger because I don't think he deserved it. But that was, as you said, that was probably the end of an era. And then once the coaching staff changed there and I wasn't around, but you could really see how Roosie and Horse has changed the way that the Swans have come about. And a lot of that as well has come from rookie listed players that end up captaining the club. So they really did turn a corner in those early 2000s, that's for sure.
Very true. Entire plumbing seems to be run on similar principles to the Bloods culture: accountability, respect, hard work. Are there lessons you learnt at footy that you use directly in your business?
Not necessarily, but I would definitely say there's some correlations there, and I think just dealing with good people is probably something that entire plumbing bases a lot of their goodwill off. So every business has A-grade clients, B-grade clients, and C-grade clients, and you need them all to create cash flow and make the balance work. We always obviously want to deal with A-grade people. If our clients are A-grade people, will they get A-grade service? We get paid well, every job's great, we deal with them well, there's a clear understanding of what's going on, and everyone's happy. Unfortunately, there's plenty of dickheads in the world and we have to deal with them, but we just have to work out who they are and whether we want to continue dealing with them with our business in the future. And it's as simple as that sounds, that's how I feel about dealing with people and clients and our business.
You talked about the incident with Goodsy at training getting bloodied in a pretty simple drill. In football, you're often told that you need to be better than your competition, not work with them. How is it that two ex-AFL footballers are happy to refer work to each other in business?
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I guess in the end, Thornley Plumbing and Entire Plumbing aren't fighting it out for a grand final win every year. Our priorities are, I think, very similar. And I want to buy time. I want to buy time for my family. And by running my business and dealing with good people and getting paid well for it, my win is buying time back. So by having a great relationship with Thornley Plumbing and Edwina and Dave and his crew helps do that. It really does create that for me. And we work perfectly together. And there's not many businesses that can do it. There's a few other local plumbers up our way in Barrow we definitely bounce around with, and it is really important to us. I don't know from an outsider's perspective as to how you could understand that works. But I feel like if everyone was to bark against each other and undercut each other, we're only really bringing down the industry, you know. We consider ourselves to be great plumbers, great businessmen, and great people, so we should be rewarded for that. And by having David and his team with us and along for the ride where needed, you know, because we certainly don't lean on them too much and vice versa. We have quite a good base at each end, but when it's required, it does work really well.
Very well said. As a plumber, when Entire Plumbing do bathroom renovations, do you put much thought into the fact that when clients decide to renovate a bathroom, it's one of the most emotional projects they undertake in their entire lives, and you realise the importance of it as the people that are providing it?
Yeah, definitely. Patience probably isn't one of the better traits, but dealing with people who are renovating bathrooms, you really need to take that on board. A lot of clients are quite savvy and they already know what they want to do, and it makes my life really easy because I'll walk into a quote and they'll just tell me exactly what they want, and they already have picked out everything under the sun, and they have a really good tack for the design element of it. That's fantastic. I'm not much of a designer in that regard, and we don't like to delve into it too much. So if a client is in a position where they are looking for insight from me, I'm happy to give it to them. But generally that will create a lot of time and a lot of questions and toing and froing. And again, the patience kicks in. And I can't decide for them what they're after, especially if they are emotional and they do have different tastes. And I need to get to know that client really well to work with them in regards to giving them exactly what they're after, because you are spending a lot of money in your house and you only want to do it once well. You don't want to be doing these things all the time. So far in the 5 or 6 years we've been doing bathrooms, everyone's been really happy as far as I've heard, and we're giving everyone what they want.
Good result. How important has your own family been under your mum and dad in helping you define success today as a grown man?
As a man, yeah, huge. Both my mum and dad are very similar. They're, as Dolly said, they're probably from they very hard parents. As I grew up, there was not much softly. There was, as I said earlier, you don't want to deal with the dickheads, you know, cut to the chase. There's no real wording people up and working around people and pussyfooting around. Look, you can't run a business like that, but for anyone that knows me, I do cut to the chase, and sometimes that can not be a good thing, but at least people know where I stand, and it can come off the wrong way sometimes, but that's how I was brought up, and I like it. I don't have to worry about too much because everything's out in the open for me, so it's very easy, mate.
And following on from that, how important do you think your influence is on your own family, your wife and kids, in helping them define success in their own lives?
Yeah, I think for the kids, I believe my parenting style and Christy's parenting style is very similar. We're certainly not hard on them, but we certainly don't want them to have anything for free. We want them to respect that nothing comes for free, and that things need to be earned. And that's a really hard thing to teach them because, you know, my youngest is 8. I've got 3 daughters. Try to keep this instilled with them. I mean, we've taken them to Disneyland a couple of times, so it's such a weird thing to sort of spoil them, but at the same time say this comes, you know, not from nothing. We've had to really work hard and put ourselves in a position to do this. And unfortunately, the kids, they don't naturally see that, but we are trying our very best to make them realise that nothing in life comes for free.
This is very wise. Let's go back to footy for a second. You captained North Shore to 3 successive premierships in the Sydney AFL. But before we get on to that, let me take you back to the year 2000. How did you go in that grand final?
Yeah, maybe we should focus on the flags that we have won. 2000 was a tough year. I actually was messaging my mate Jason Bush, who played for North Shore, and he was a part of a big stink at halftime in the 2000 grand final. I actually wasn't around on the field in the area. I didn't see too much of the blue, but I did hear it was a monster. But yeah, Penno got us that year. That was our first grand final of 7 in a row, I believe. And we got towed up. We did. I think you put 10 goals on us in the first half, so we were never coming back. And that's a tough loss because for anyone that doesn't know, North Shore and Pennant Hills in that era were absolute arch rival enemies. The week-to-week games, there'd be a punch on every quarter. It was huge, but also a lot of mutual respect. But I believe when I finished my career, in the end, it's a little bit like Dolly and I. Penno and North Shore were actually quite better mates. They're very similar clubs. They don't have a lot of money, and they play for their heart and sleeve. And whereas a lot of other clubs we like to beat, and I'm not going to say their names, but Barnes and I know exactly who they are.
That's very well put, very well said. We certainly were, North Shore and Pennant Hills certainly were competition that couldn't work together early on back in the day. So you mentioned Jason Bush there. You've still got friends from North Shore and the Greater Sydney Aussie Rules competition?
Yeah, absolutely. As you do, Barnes, I know you would have your groups out of your club footy, and I think as well. Look, I don't know what yours are like and whether you're in touch with them, but I assume you are because you're a legend, mate. You're a legend of that club. So we do. There's a group of guys who are on a couple of different chats. Actually, there's an older group of guys which we hang out with and chat and go away and play golf with. Ducky and Tommy and Michael Hosky and a couple of old coaches, Bushy and Ryan Meldrum. We get on a good chat and we like to get out and play golf and get on the piss and carry on. And then there's another whole big bunch of boys, Matty Parker and Colkey and Benny Carline and that crowd. There's quite a big chat we have there, and we like to do the same. We like to get away and catch up and reminisce and take the piss out on each other on our 4 flags that we've won there at North Shore.
And why have those enduring friendships been so important to you in your life?
Well, you grow up with these guys and you go through, some of them, the Paul Fowlers and the Nick Egans of the world. These are guys I've played with at St Ives as a junior. And we're growing together. We've known these kids since I was 10, 11 years old and played rep footy and travelled interstate and done all these wonderful things and become quite close mates. And then when you go to senior footy, obviously that's a new world. And to win flags with some of your best mates, I couldn't think of anything better. As I know you've experienced and you've captained your club, and all those magical feelings that you get from club footy, and the relationships you make from not so much just footy. That's my element, but I know from team sport, it's huge. You can't replace it. I don't know what I'd be as a person without it. I think I'd be soulless. I don't know.
It's very true. I can't see you being soulless, though. A lot of people, it's hard to explain the quality of these enduring friendships to people outside the circles that don't have them. Are there lessons you learned about these friendships through football that you still use in your everyday life and your business?
I'd say yes. It's not something I consciously think about. But I think, again, by just having good people around you and over all that time and what you've put in and invested in the flags and your teammates and the training and creating some success, they're all things you take to your business naturally. And I don't think it's something I consciously have directives at. As Dolly has explained as well, you have your own ethics which just come naturally, and you surround yourself with good people. success is not easy to come by, but I think it does come easy in a way because you've already set yourself up by being around good people. I think if you hang around the wrong people and you have the wrong directives, you're almost destined to fail.
Very wise man. You have captained flags at North Shore. You've played a season at the Swans. Looking back with hindsight, what do you remember most proudly about your time as a footballer?
Yeah, look, my answer isn't playing at the Swans. I actually have a little bit of disappointment there purely because I just didn't develop and kick on to where I probably would have liked to have. Doesn't take anything away from what I've done, that's for sure. Very proud of my folks, as every kid is, with punting you around and the support. And as a parent now, I do actually understand how much hard work that is. The highlights are definitely the flags with North Shore, winning a couple of back-to-back and obviously captaining a couple and having the respect of your teammates. And look, a lot of those flags didn't come easy, especially the last one. I think I got cleaned up. I missed a Mad Monday, which was not real fun, but couple of rough trips around there. But look, you know, I gave as good as I got, and I think I probably came out square in the end with that regard.
Let's go back to business for a second now. Have you ever been tempted to do a dodgy and charge somebody for 5 hours when you were only there for 3? Is that tempting?
No, I'm too busy for that. We've got that much work to get through most of the time that we're just chasing our tail and getting through it. Look, again, with the ethics, as Dolly sort of expressed, you're going to deal with people who sometimes think that maybe you have done that, and you have to actually justify your time to a lot of people. And that's fine, and that's quite easy. We have the systems in place where the guys log in and we can show where our times are and hours. You're not going to win them all, though. You can't please everyone. So that's a very hard. It's probably one of the hardest things in our business, being that we charge by the hour. But no, not when you're looking to have return clients and do the right thing and build your business on all the right things.
Sport is often used as a metaphor for business practices. Looking back now with the advantage of the hindsight and wisdom you have, knowing how cutthroat professional sport is these days, would you rather have made it at the Swans and played in that 2005 grand final, or are you happy being a plumber?
Oh, it's a pretty easy one, mate. I 100% would have loved to have kicked on and played a couple of 100 first-grade games in AFL footy. That's what I would have. That was my dream as a kid. Being a plumber, it's not the end of the world. I can't honestly say I enjoy it that much. I am a good plumber, otherwise I wouldn't have the business I have. But I say to a lot of people, a plumbing business is no different to any business. It's just creating and giving a service that you're good at, and you can justify a certain hourly rate to be paid. It could be electrical, it could be marketing, it could be graphic design, it could be anything. In the end, as long as you provide something that people are willing to pay for, that's where I'm at. I think Dolly may differ. I think he may enjoy his plumbing work side more than I do. Not to say I'm as not invested as he is with his business, but I think we just look at it a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Now, I can't let you leave without asking you, who's the better plumber, you or David?
Oh, geez. I'll just say David. It's just easier to keep the peace, I think, going forward. No, look, and to be fair, look, David's got a lot more experience than me. He's at least another 8 or 10 years older than me. No, I think he's about 4 or 5 years older, and he has been around a lot longer. And it would be remiss for me to think that anyone is a better plumber than anyone. We all have a lot of different experience in doing a lot of different work. Dolly has a lot of high-end experience dealing with gas, commercial gas, whereas I'm not that well experienced with gas work. And that's a huge thing in the plumbing industry, gas and the compliance that comes with that and the safety, and Dolly is all over it. So if I have any dramas there, I'm always in his ear, and especially in regards to the specs for that. But in saying that, I'm obviously, our business is a lot more experienced in bathrooms, and as Dolly has mentioned, he's referring us into a couple of bathrooms constantly. So that's an area of his business they haven't delved into, and it's something that I just enjoy, and it works for us. So every business is definitely a little bit different in how they go about things. So, I'll give it to Dolly. I'm happy to do that.
That's very diplomatically said. Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you, David, for joining me on Everyday Greatness and sharing your pearls of wisdom.
Good on you, Barnes. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for listening. Thanks to the ARA Group for being our major sponsor for the 4th year in a row. Thanks to Thornley Plumbing and Entire Plumbing for jointly sponsoring this episode. Thank you to Look Studio Australia for recording this episode. And I hope that when you put your device down in a little while, you lift your head up, push your shoulders back, and walk down the street proud of being an everyday Joe Bag of Donuts. I hope you can join us next episode, where I'll be speaking to the CEO of the Northern Suburbs Football Association, Edward Ferguson, and the founder of Gotcha for Life and men's health advocate, Gus Warland. I'll be speaking to them both about how you can be proud of not being a dickhead. Thank you again. To find out more about Everyday Greatness, go to our website, www.everydaygreatness.com.au, or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Thank you again for listening.